I have 12:15. So, ding, 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 ding. Good morning and welcome to Rotary. Today we are so glad to have you. We've got a special program just for you.
Okay.
So to get us started, Jan, would you be so kind as to bring us to order today?
Certainly, certainly. Let's pray. Gracious Lord, we do give you thanks for this day, and we give you thanks for this time that we have to gather together. And Lord, we thank you for the gift of art and creativity and how you use that to bring beauty into our lives and allow us to convey beauty. And so we ask that you will help all of us, even those of us who do not feel artistic, to be creative in conveying your beauty through our service in Rotary. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you. And let's see, Pat, would you like to lead us in pledge today?
Yes, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. And let's see, who do we have today? Deb, would you like to lead us in song today?
Only if I can mute my mic and lip sync. But okay, here we go. We're gonna give it we're gonna give it a try here. All right. Rotary, that spells Rotary. Rotary is known on land and sea. From north to south, from east to west, he profits most who serves the best. Rotary, that spells Rotary.
Beautiful. Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much. Wonderful job. Wonderful job. Okie dokie. Let's see. Do we have any visiting Rotarians with us today? Scrolling and scrolling. I don't think so, but we do have some guests, sort of. Crystal is a guest, and we will get back to Crystal in 1 minute. And let's see, Christine is sort of a guest. She's a new member. Everybody knows Christine. Hi, Christine. And we do have our featured speaker with us, which we will also be back to in just 1 minute. I think that's everybody there, except Claudia. Hi, Claudia. I didn't get to say hi to you yet. Good morning. But you're driving, so be safe. Let's see, we have a Rotary anniversary right around the corner. Our very own Susan Ivy turns a Rotary 2. Congratulations, Susan. We're so happy to have you with us for 2 years and many more years to come.
You're a big girl now.
Do we have any happy dollar announcements? Maria is not here with us yet today, but she does have her very own happy dollar announcement. For more information on that, read in the bulletin or on our website for wonderful news about Maria. And for our foundation update, Charles is not here with us today, but this just in from Rotary International, just in a few days ago. India beat wild polio 10 years ago today. This amazing achievement is a reminder that when we work together, the world can make great strides against global health threats. It's time to hashtag end polio everywhere. And so, when you get your monthly invoice on or about the 15th of the month, and you see a $10 suggested donation for the End Polio campaign, these are where those dollars go. They go around the world to help eradicate polio. We still have 2 countries with wild polio, and that's Afghanistan and Pakistan. And remember that the continent of Africa was recently certified polio-free by the World Health Organization. And so these dollars do good works around the world and in our own backyard. This concludes our foundation update. And we have our second reading of a prospective member, the other Crystal. Dawn, would you like to reintroduce the other Crystal to our group, please?
I certainly will. She is behind her iPhone homeschooling her 2 children right now. Crystal and I met with a group of people out here in Rivera. She is from South Furious. Her and her husband and beautiful family just moved here to the Rivera area, and she wanted to get involved with the community. And I brought her on, and she's going to bring us a lot of good energy because she has energy.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dawn, and thank you, Crystal, for being here. If anybody knows of any good reason why Crystal would not make a good Rotarian, please reach out to your very favorite officer or director. And new member orientation coming soon, possibly at Rotary After Dark, possibly Monday, January 25th, and that will be somewhere. More information to come. And now, on to our featured presentation. We have Miss Santa Barraza and Jay Dean or Claudia. Oh, I think Claudia is still driving. Jay Dean, would you like to introduce our featured presentation to us today?
Absolutely. Let me give Claudia a chance to unmute. I didn't know if she was driving, or maybe Robert. I'm not sure who.
Well, it was actually a combination of both of us, I think. But yes, we have Dr. Santa Barraza with us today. She is formerly a professor in the art department at A&M Kingsville. And since been in different colleges, I don't really know her all that well, but I do know her artwork is of great renown. And she's going to tell us today about a gallery that she's opened here in Kingsville, and also a little bit about herself and the exhibit that's currently at the gallery. So Dr. Barraza, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you for having me. And I want to get started with a little bit of history of where I am. I have the gallery called Barraza Fine Art LLC, and it's at 407 South 5th, which is right across from the railroad tracks. And I have, I put in this photo because I recently, and some of you probably were there, I received the Tejano Heritage Award from Texas A&M University in the fall of this year. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself. Can we go on to the next slide? Oh, how do I go to the next slide? Okay. Can you forward the next slide?
Yes, ma'am. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Just keep and do exactly what you do, and I'll follow along.
Okay. All right. This is photographs of my family, and I just wanted to show you this because we have been here since we have been here for a long time, and I do want to tell a little bit about myself also. I was educated at the University of Texas in Austin. I received my undergraduate and graduate degrees there. And prior to coming to Kingsville to teach at the university, I actually taught at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. I taught at Penn State University, at University Park, and LaRoche College in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And so I have like 34 years experience teaching in higher education. And so I also want to tell a little bit about some of the awards that I've got. Besides getting the Tejano Heritage Award, I also got the, in 1998, I received the the Regional Award for Architecture and Design by the National Association of Architecture and Design. And this was awarded to Kel Munoz Architectural Firm and myself when we did the public art and the architecture of the Biosciences building at the University of Texas in San Antonio. And I will show you some of that work through the images that I show you today. I also have, I received the Southwest Book Award from the University of Texas in El Paso for the book that was published in 2001 on my artwork called Santa Barraza, Artists of the Borderlands. And it was published by Texas A&M University Press. And in 2008, I also got the Heroes for Children's Award by the Texas Board of Education from the state of Texas. And then I got in 2014, I received the Lifetime Achievement Award in the Visual Arts from Mexicarte Museum of Art in Austin. And I have exhibited not only in the United States, but abroad, internationally. I've exhibited in Mexico, in Argentina, in Spain, in Italy, in Germany, in Austria, and France. And so, and then my work has been in private collections throughout the country and abroad. So this panel that you see, these photos are actually my family. On my maternal side, which we are Barraza and Mesa. You can see the man on the horse, that's Santos Mesa. He is my grandmother's father. And then my grandmother on my paternal side is Victoria Mesa. And you can see her on the far left. She's the woman wearing the long dress from the early 1900s. And then of course, Victoria's son is my father, Joaquin Barraza, and his father was Simon Barraza. You can see him in the World War II uniform on the far right. And in the middle, you see the Contreras family, which is my mother's family. And on the top, you see my grandfather with his children. And there's two children that are not there. Of course, they're all gone now, but there's two women, the oldest girls in his family that are not in this photograph. My mother is sitting down in front, the front line. She's the person in the middle, the shortest one. That's my mother, Frances. And below that is a photograph of my grandfather when I believe there was a parade here in Kingsville, and he was involved in the parade. And I recall that he had an old car when I was little. He died like in 1954, and I was born in 51. So I remember an old car in his yard. But that was my grandfather's habitación. On my father's side, they're from Sarita, and Sarita, Texas. They were cowboys and vaqueros in the Kennedy Ranch. And my great-grandfather, Teofilo Barraza, was a surveyor that surveyed the land and divided the estate between Mifflin Kennedy and Richard King. And this was done in the late 1800s or mid 1800s, when there was the partnership between the two cattle barons was sort of dissolved. And so he was that. And if you look at De Leon's book on the history of Texas, he's mentioned there in the history book. And his name was Teofilo Barraza. So we can go to the second slide, the following slide. This is the building where I have the gallery. It's on 407 South 5th, and it actually belonged to Oliver Watson. Oliver Watson and Elda, his wife, came to Kingsville in 1907 because that's when this house was built, but it could have been before then. They came to become involved in the railroad business, and he was the first justice of the peace of Kingsville. This house, I found a photograph of my neighbor because they built this house and the house next door, which is a 3-story house. And the family built the 2 homes, and they built 3 more on 2nd Street in the historic district. But before they built these homes, they actually lived in tents by the railroad tracks, and they had a business of providing food for the railroad workers. And he actually filled the steam engines with water, Mr. Watson. And they lived in this little house, and then next door they built a 3-story house, which was the first boarding house of Kingsville. So I found these photographs of 1907, and I can see this little house in the background. So I suspect that it was built in 1907, but I really don't know. And of course, since it's historic, you can see on the bottom left-hand side, garage. It was a carriage house that was shared by this house and the house next door. I had to demolish it because it was falling apart. And this house was in really bad shape too. But what's interesting is that because of the cinder blocks that it was built with, they were actually designed and built in Loyola Beach with the sand, and then they were transported here. So when I decided to restore it, I had to use those cinder blocks that are not available anymore or being done anymore. So the contractor hired these artisans from McAllen, and they came and they made copies and molds of the bricks, and then they made them. And so they were all handmade. The columns, as you can see on the building, were cinder blocks that were holding the roof. And so they had to be regular columns. So they were handmade, and you can see them on the far right. And you can see that they were made out of cement, and they had to be in the Ionic style. What was really interesting is that these artisans were originally the families from Mexico. So they did them, I think, in what is called the Plateresque style of the Baroque architecture of Mexico, which are very heavy and monolithic. And so you can see that they're really different, and I really like that, but the Historic Society didn't like that. They said they're really not European looking, and they really are not. They look like a hybrid between the European and the indigenous, which I thought were really beautiful. And if you can see on the top, there's the Ionic style, but if you look at it closely, on the capital of the column, you will see that they look like the face of the Tlaloc, rain god of Mexico. And as you can see, a lot of these images do appear on the pyramids in Mexico, and I thought it was so beautiful. In the middle, I had to do a lot of things in the exterior that had to maintain the integrity of the building. The building is actually in the Victorian folk style. And I think that style was at the turn of the 1900s, and then it continued up to like the 1920s. So that's what the style of this house is. So the doors had to be solid wood. They're all handmade. The windows had to be out of solid wood also. They actually allowed me to use the side windows out of non-wood because it was so expensive. But the interior, I could do whatever I wanted to. So in the interior, I gutted everything. I left the chimney, and I added the gallery space and an office and a small kitchen. So can we go to the next slide? So you can see the house, what it looks like right now on the image on the far left. And then this is the first exhibit that I had. I opened it on August the 29th, 2020. And this is called The Spiritual Journeys. Prior to this, I actually had surgery. I got really sick, and I was in the hospital, and I had my gallbladder removed. And I thought to myself, life is too short. So that's when I decided to retire from the university. So I actually retired on the last day of July. And then I opened the gallery on August the 29th. And the restoration was finished like in June of 2020. So you can see the poster for the Spiritual Journeys. I had 25 artists from throughout the country that exhibited, and you can see the inside of the building. And this particular image that's below the poster is a very interesting image. It was a photograph done by some video artists and photographers out of Robstown, and it documented a miracle that they had seen in St. Anthony's Church. So there was a lot of beautiful images in the exhibition. On the house itself, I want to tell you that I have the wrought iron gate in the front. I actually have a gold design that comes from the design of the dress of the Virgin of Guadalupe. And I'm a very firm believer of the Virgin of Guadalupe. Of course, I'll tell you a little bit more about her in the next slide, but I took that image and it was cut out of metal and it was attached to the iron gate. I wanted to do more of those images throughout the gate, but it was very expensive. So that was the only one that I did. Can we go to the next slide? And this is the recent show that we have now, Our Lady of Guadalupe. And this is the poster of the exhibit. The poster is actually of a statue of a Virgin of Guadalupe in a private home in Robstown that is shedding real tears. I have not seen the statue, but you can see it when you come to the show. I have photographs of her. I don't have the statue, but she started to cry at the beginning of 2020. And they say, And then they brought me some cotton balls with the tears, and they smell like roses. But I did go to the household like in February of this year. That was before she started crying. I didn't see her in the household. She wasn't there yet. But there was a photograph of Jesus Christ, and he too was crying. And so I asked if I could touch the tears, and they're coming out of the tear ducts. And so when I touched the tears, they felt like they're transparent liquid, but they felt like oil. And they had an aroma of myrrh, very beautiful, sweet smell. And so I asked her, you know, when I decided every year I do something to commemorate Our Lady of Guadalupe. And this year I decided to do, and since I have the gallery, to do an exhibition. And so I asked her if I could use the image of the crying Virgin of Guadalupe, and she said yes. And so that is the poster. And we have photographs of her. And so we have like a little area that's kind of like the miracle photographs and artwork of the Virgin of Guadalupe. So these are just inside shots of the different images. There are about 20 artists, and these artists are from the region. One is from Connecticut, but most of them are from Corpus Christi, Robstown, Austin, and San Antonio. So this is the cake below that is actually a painting that I did of my sister. My sister Frances has passed away in 2016, but I saw her as a very religious person. She actually joined the Pink Nuns, they call them, which is a group of nuns that are dedicated to constant prayer. And so she was sort of like the religious person in our family. So I used her as a symbol of the Virgin of Guadalupe on the cake. So could I go to the next one? And these are some of my works. This is Napatla that I did in 1995. This is a large piece. And it actually talks about the migration of people from Mexico into this country and how they are so much engrossed in their culture that they bring it with them, not only spiritually, but physically and mentally. So this woman is emerging out of a maguey plant, and she's so engrossed in her culture that she's becoming the plant, and she's becoming the environment that she comes from. So this is Napantla. It's an oil painting on canvas. And then the next one, which is the corn goddess, Codex of Diosa del Maíz. This is also done in 93. And this is my interpretation. And I do want to tell you a little bit about this format. I decided to do this format in the 90s because I wanted to use a format that was strictly American. And it comes from the Aztec codices of Mexico. The Mesoamerican codices were the books of Mexico, of ancient Mexico. And what they did is that they had two books, like had the common book, and then they had the sacred books. And in the sacred books, they had fold and accordion books, and they had dots. And in the sacred book, they believe there were 13 days in 1 week. And actually their calendar was more accurate than our calendar. It acted like a calendar. So if you look at this image, you'll see of the corn goddess, you'll see dot, and there's two boxes. So it means daytime, nighttime. 2 dots is day 2, and it goes all the way up to 13. And as you can see, what I did in the middle panel was everything that would occur in that week. And it was like a calendar. So you could tell on what day of what week of what month of what century this occurred. And so it was a very historic way that they would use hieroglyphics in their work. So I took that idea and sort of made it my own. And so this was my interpretation of the corn goddess. So can you go to the next one, please? This is Codex of the Sacred Heart from 1993. I mean, we're talking about a lot of years ago. And then the Codex of the Trinity. But talking about the Sacred Heart, I did these pieces because I had an exhibition in Sacramento, California in 1993, actually. And so I put together a body of work, and this is from that exhibition. And these are rather large. They're about 6 feet by 5 feet. And the one with the maguey and the heart actually is inspired by some of the ancient books of Mexico. And there is a book that tells about the myth or the history of the migration of the Aztecs looking for their promised land. And as they emerged from the caves, they used to live in caves, they went looking for their promised land, and they would sacrifice. Of course, later on, when they established themselves in Mexico City, then they had pyramids, but at that time they were nomadic, and they actually would sacrifice over a maguey plant. And there is an image where they have these maguey plants and they have sacrifice hearts over the maguey plant. So I took that idea in this particular painting. And then the other one is the Codex of the Trinity, and it's actually in my interpretation of the Virgin Guadalupe, with my mother in the yellow on one side and my grandmother in pink on the other side. And behind them is Tlaloc, the rain god, with his hands outstretched and fertilizing the earth with amulets. And again, it's in the Codex style of the Aztecs of Mexico. So can we have the next one, please? And this is a series that I put together called Mujeres Nobles series. One of the codices, which is, it is called, it's a very interesting name. It has a Nahuatl name because that's how they spoke. But the Nahuatl name is, okay, it's the, you can go, yes, to this one. I found this Mesoamerican codex that is, it was in Nahuatl, and it was the Azatitlan Codex, and they were folded accordion books, as I was saying earlier. And so on the 27th panel, they had an image of this structure that looked like a house or a temple, and they had these women coming out of it, and they had these beautiful headdresses. And it was that particular book told about the role of women in their society, how they were supposed to act, what they were supposed to do in order to be noble women or accepted women in society. So I took that idea and I started appropriating that idea and putting images of people that I admire or people that were known in this region. And of course we have Selena here, and behind her, I think that her family was from Guerrero. So Guerrero, I believe, were Zapotecs. And so they used to wear embroidery huipiles or tops. So I took one of her images that I saw and appropriated and put these embroidered flowers all over her top. I think she has, in that particular image, she had like a leather jacket, and I just sort of made it different. And then of course, she's emerging out of this house. And then below her, you can see on the roof of the house, there is a skull from the codices, and it's actually spitting her out, and it represents death, and it's spitting her out. And then on the right-hand side of her, you have a healing tree of Concepcion. I don't know if you've been there, but there's a tree that actually you hug it and you hear like, you hear this roaring water going through the tree, and they say it's the Holy Spirit. And then on the other side is a cloud that emerged, and photographs were taken of this cloud that had like a chalice coming out and a dove and a cross. And this was a photograph taken by one of my friends who's a healer, and he was asking God to show him a sign that he should continue with his healing traits. And he saw this sign in the clouds, and he took a photograph of it. So he gave me the photograph, and I've been using it in a lot of my work. And another one is actually Frida Kahlo. And Frida Kahlo is again merging out of this house, and inside the house is Tezcatlipoca, which is the god of the underworld, and then Coyochalki, which is the moon goddess. And I made an affiliation between both of these women because Coyochalki was dismembered by her brother in a battle between them. And then Frida Kahlo also suffered a lot with the pelvic bone that she had, I don't know how many 20 some operations on her pelvic bone from an accident that she had. And eventually her leg was amputated. So I sort of made correlations between the two of them and put it on this. And by the way, these paintings are done on amate paper. This is a bark paper that was a sacred paper of ancient Mexico. Montezuma actually asked San Andres, is where they make them in Mexico, by Puebla, to donate tons of this paper every year. They had to do that as their payment because they were under the jurisdiction of Montezuma. And so anyway, so I use the amate paper in my work to make it sort of give it that sacredness that I appropriate from the Mexican culture. And I took this idea of Frida from one of her paintings called The Two Fridas. So can we go to the next one? And this is my interpretation of La Malinche and also the mighty Hana Coyochalki, which is the moon goddess. But La Malinche, the woman with the baby coming out of the maguey plant, is my interpretation of La Malinche, which was a woman by the name of Doña Mariana that was given to Hernán Cortés when he conquered Mexico in 1519. And Doña Mariana eventually became his secretary, and then also bore the first mestizo, her lover, and bore the first mestizo. So scholars today, particularly like Ana Castillo and Some of the other scholars have written a lot about Mexican-American women, Chicanas. They claim that that La Malinche represents to her, to some of the scholars, as the Eve, because she bore the first mestizo or the first hybrid of the Americas. So here you see Hernan Cortez looking at her as a voyager, and then you see what happened, the atrocity that happened when they arrived, and there was this atrocity of murder of the indigenous of Mexico. And then you see on the other hand, the almighty hand with the heart inside, and you see the body parts of Pollo Chalqui when she was dismembered by her own brother. And again, this is in the style of the Codex. So can you go to the next one, please? And this is an image, it continues with the Mujeres Nobles. This one is really large. I've also done the Virgin of Guadalupe, but I don't have a photograph of it. And I'm doing, working with large images. These are 4 feet by 8 feet. The one of my mother coming out of the house. She is behind the tree of life, which is the way the Mayan culture did it. And it's very interesting that they have a tree of life that in the midst of the Mayan culture, where they claim that they emerged from these trees, that humanity emerged as human beings out of this tree. And it's very interesting because when I was reading about the Aztecs and when the Spaniards arrived, the Spaniards thought that the Aztecs were one of the lost tribes of Israel, because a lot of the things that they had were very similar to that lost tribe. And then the Mayans also have this idea, and then I'm looking at correlations between the tree of life and also the tree of Adam and Eve, where they ate the forbidden tree, the forbidden fruit. And so it seems like there's a lot of correlations, you know, between the Bible and ancient Mexico. And I guess this occurs with all of the ancient cultures, but it's very interesting. We have these correlations. So this is my mother. I painted this. My mother died in 92. And so I painted this on the amate and with the tree of life behind her. The dress, I don't think you can see it, but the red roof of the dress has a design of the dress of the Virgin of Guadalupe. And the flower in the white portion of the house is called Flor de Creación, the flower of creation, which is a symbol that was found in the pyramids in Mexico City when they excavated the pyramids. And so, so that was a symbol of Mother Earth. So that was my mother, and this is my mother when she graduated from high school. We don't know exactly the dates, but we sort of like assumed that was a date. And then the other one is my mother that I painted as a Codex when she passed away in 1992. So I did this to honor my mother. And you can see behind her the Virgin of Guadalupe, and then you see the couple that's to her right, and the couple are her parents. And then La Catrina, which is a symbol of death in the Mexican culture. And then you see my mother emerging as a young woman in the little boxes as a young girl and then becoming a young woman. So all the symbols that you see there relate to women. Like for example, in the 2 dots, that is sacrifice heart. And I always felt that my mother sacrificed herself for us. She would always do things for us. She was like every mother is very fulfilling and nourishing to the family. And I always felt that that was her role, and that's what she did. And then if you can see on the 4 dots, you see this bird with sort of like a little bell on top. That was a symbol for marriage. So I took all these symbols from the ancient books of Mexico and sort of appropriated it and presented it in a contemporary way. So can we see the next slide? These are some of the murals that I did originally, and you can see on I'm here on the far top right. I'm doing in dry pastels. I'm drawing the Virgin of Guadalupe. This is on Richard Street. I think it was 200 Richard Street, and with dry pastels. And this became a project that my students got involved with, and also one of my other colleagues, Darren Forehand. And then also some of the community members came and helped. So it was a very rewarding project. And it was about, I can tell you, it was really huge. I think it was like 45 feet by 75 feet, very large. They closed the street off, and I was able to do that. I remember, I'm looking right now to tell you the dimensions, but it was done in 2007. It was 43 feet by 65 feet. And then below that, you see myself painting the mural that I did for Madre Julia Navarrete, which is on Richard Street also. And this was done in 2009. And it's an acrylic painting on a plaster wall that is part of the center of Madre Julia Navarrete that I haven't, because of the pandemic, I don't know what's going on over there, but they were trying to get her canonized as a saint. What's interesting about her life is that when I started doing the mural, they gave me some books to read about her. And she was from Oaxaca, Mexico originally, and she set up the order of the nuns from Oaxaca, and they were eventually came to Kingsville in like the 19-teens. And I asked Sister Maxie, why did they decide to come to Kingsville? And she said she really didn't know. And then I asked, and then I assumed that it was because after the Mexican Revolution, they were actually expelled from Mexico. And so that was one of the reasons why she came, and she established her order here. And she actually offered the first school for Mexican-American children because we really didn't have schools for them at that time. So she is a very important person. And now they say there's a lot of miracles that happen in her name, especially with children. So it's a very interesting story. And I also read in one of her books that, and it was in Spanish, so it was very hard for me to read it. And I couldn't believe what I was reading, but one of the stories says that when she was a young woman, they used to have like their own sacred religious advisors. And one of her advisors told her that she needed to get up on a cross and be more serious about her role in life. So she did that. She would get up on a cross and form the crucifixion form. And she would stay up for maybe half an hour, and then she would come down and she would pass out, and she would have these visions. And so I couldn't believe that she was actually doing that. So I had a student who was a Spanish major, and I said, is this what I'm reading? Is this correct? And she read it and she said, yes, that's what they did. That's what she was doing. So it's very, very difficult life that she had, but she really wanted that type of life. And then you can see on the middle part, my Virgin of Guadalupe was at St. Anthony's Church. This was about 2 stories high. I believe it was 35 feet tall. And this was done on wooden panels. It is no longer there because the wood that they provided me was actually another image of the Virgin, and it was old. And I told them, you need to seal it because it's already decaying, and they didn't seal it. So it fell apart. So they hired somebody else to do another one. So, so this was mine that I did in 2007. And then the one on the far right, my far right, you can see the street one that I did here on 6th Street and Lee. And you can see the person next to it. I don't know if you can see it. He looks like an ant on the left. He looks like about right there. You see how he looks like an ant. That's how big it was. It was humongous. I don't know if any of you got to see it, but that was a really large one. It was about, that was done in, I started in December the 15th, 2012, and then I ended on February the 3rd, 2013. It measures 45 feet wide by 75 feet. And my students helped me towards the end do this piece, and it's on acrylics on a cement slab. And then people in the community started coming, and it was there were all kinds of miracles. You wouldn't believe the miracles that occurred. But I remember that the photographer that was documenting this project brought his mother one day, and she painted all day. And then when we dedicated this image, she came with 24 beautiful roses and offered them to the Virgin. And I asked, why is she bringing those roses? And her son told me, because she asked for a miracle and she got her miracle. So, it was very interesting. So can we have the next slide? Can we go to the next slide? I think there's one more. Oh, there we go. Oh, there's more. What happened? Okay. Can we go to the one before this? There we go. So these are murals that I've done also throughout the country. For example, this Olin mural was in the Biosciences building at UTSA. That was done in 1997. The one below that was a retablo mural. It was done on metal. The one above it, the Olin mural, was done on a plaster wall with acrylics. And the one below it was done with automobile car paints and airbrushes, and it was done on metal, and it was baked like a car, and it's actually a curved one. It's on a curved wall. The one above it This particular building, I had to interview the scientists and talk to them about the research. They all were doing research on the brain at that time. The building was just being built. And so I talked to them, and it was designed by Henry Munoz and John Kell, architects in San Antonio. And then I was hired as one of the artists. And then also Alice Adams from New York City designed a water fountain below that. And so we worked together on this project. And so I was told that I had to talk to the scientists and get information from them, and then use that information, use something from South Texas, the history of South Texas, something from the northern part of Mexico, and to incorporate all of that together. So when they did research of the brain, so the yellow part that's up on the Olin mural is actually the readings of the communication from the left hemisphere to the right hemisphere. And then in the center is actually the symbol of the Olin, which is an indigenous symbol for continuous transformation. However, when the scientists came to see me working on this project, they said, oh, look, there's a DNA reading. So they interpreted that as DNA readings. And a lot of things that I had here were from the ancient books of Mexico, but they interpreted them as scientific names, which was very interesting. And then the one below that was actually based on, they're all scientific images with some of the ancient images from the ancient books of Mexico. And this was done in the style of the Mixtec codices. The Mixtec codices, they would read from right to left, and you would follow the red bars. You would start on the right, and you would follow the red bar and go through it till you ended up on the red bar. So I did it in that style. So this was Retablo mural. The Mestizaje with Zapata and the rain god, and also Hernan Cortez is on the upper right-hand side. And this was done at Penn State. I did a series of multicultural murals with the students, and this was in 1990. And then below that is a mural that I also did for the show that I had in California. And it is about 9 feet by 12 feet, and it's about women of power. And of course, I have the Indigenous Virgin here in the middle with other women that I admired. So can we go to the next slide, which is the last one? It's some of the sand paintings that I've done. These are sand paintings. And of course, this one on the far right, the Flower of Creation. This was done at the Latino Cultural Center in Dallas for a solo show that I had there in 2006. And it depicts Mother Earth from the codices, but in 3-dimensional. And what I did is I had students, one of my students, Eloy Jimenez, I recruited him from Oaxaca, and they do this tradition in Oaxaca. So he helped me a lot with some of these images. And this is in 3-dimensional, we use wet sand, and then we would use dry pigments over it to create the colors. And the one in the middle, we did it in the Ney Museum in Victoria, Texas in 2007. And this is, again, is the two Fridas, but as skeletons. We did this for Day of the Dead. And it was large, it was the whole second room of the museum. And then the students from the high school and the junior college came to help us also. So became like a community project. And then the last one is for Day of the Dead at the Salazar building in 2016. And this was done to commemorate Day of the Dead. And of course it was done with wet sand and then dry pigments.
So we have about 30 seconds left before we need to get going. We certainly do appreciate you being here with us today. I'm sorry to cut you short there, but we are just about time to get back to work after lunch. And so we do have a few, thank you so much. We do have a few upcoming events. We have Rotary After Dark this month on a Monday. This coming Monday, the location is to be announced. And so be looking for that in an announcement. The next day is our in-person hybrid meeting next Tuesday. And so far that will be at the Cherry Tree Tea Room. Next month we have Lone Star Pets. It's not just for presidents, it's for anyone willing to learn more. And it is now time to move on to our weekly Paul Harris Drawing winners. And Santa, if you could help us with this, and would you pick a number 1 or 2?
I guess 2.
Thank you so much. And So Group 2 wins. Congratulations, Jan and Marty. Remember, every week is a new opportunity to connect with your fellow Rotarian. And now, please join me in the four-way test of the things we think, say, and do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? That's all for today, folks. Thanks so much. And thank you again, Santa, so much for being here with us today. It was a joy hearing from you.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care, everyone. Thanks again, Santa.
Thank you.